They laughed at her. The new black nurse who didn't fit their mold. Too quiet, too skilled, too different. But when a gravely wounded Navy SEAL commander was rushed through those hospital doors, barely clinging to life, everything changed. He opened his eyes, saw her face, and did something no one expected. He saluted, and with that one gesture, a 7-year-old secret began to unravel. A secret about betrayal, survival, and a woman who refused to stay dead. This is her story. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The sun hadn't fully risen when Nia Wallace stepped through the automatic doors of Crestview Memorial Hospital. The building loomed above her, all glass and steel, a monument to medical excellence that served some of the wealthiest patients on the East Coast. She carried a small messenger bag and wore navy blue scrubs that looked freshly pressed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression was calm, almost unreadable. The main lobby buzzed with early morning activity. Doctors in white coats moved with purpose, their shoes clicking against polished floors. Nurses clustered around workstations, reviewing charts and sipping coffee. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged. Nia approached the reception desk, where a blonde woman in her 50s sat typing at a computer. The nameplate read Gloria Bennett, Human Resources. "Good morning," Nia said. "I'm reporting for my first day." Nia Wallace, Trauma Unit. Gloria glanced up briefly, her fingers still moving across the keyboard. "Oh, right. The new hire." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a badge without much ceremony. "Here. Orientation starts in 10 minutes. 3rd floor conference room. Don't be late." "Thank you," Nia said, clipping the badge to her scrub top. Gloria's eyes returned to her screen. "Your file is pretty thin. Not much work history." "I've been traveling," Nia replied simply. Gloria's tone suggested she'd heard that before and didn't believe it. "Well, welcome to Crestview. We have high standards here." Nia nodded and headed toward the elevators. As she walked, she noticed the plaques on the walls celebrating the hospital's achievements. Awards for trauma care, recognition from military medical programs, photos of surgeons shaking hands with politicians and generals. This place didn't just treat patients. It collected prestige like trophies. The 3rd floor conference room was already half full when she arrived. A dozen other staff members sat in chairs arranged in a semicircle. Most were chatting quietly among themselves. Nia chose a seat near the back and settled in, her hands folded in her lap. A tall man in surgical scrubs entered, carrying a tablet and a coffee cup. He had silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and the confident posture of someone who'd spent decades being the smartest person in every room. This was Dr. Marcus Holloway, head of trauma surgery. Everyone straightened slightly when he walked in. "Good morning," Dr. Holloway said, not bothering with pleasantries. "We got a full roster today, so let's make this quick. For those who don't know me, I run this unit. My word is final. Questions come through proper channels. If you're not sure about something, ask a senior nurse or resident before you touch anything." He tapped his tablet, and a schedule appeared on the screen behind him. "We've got 3 incoming traumas from overnight, 2 scheduled surgeries, and potential VIP arrivals later today. That means everyone stays sharp." A woman sitting in the front row raised her hand. She had graying brown hair and wore scrubs with embroidered flowers on the collar. Her badge identified her as Patricia Hendricks, senior nurse. "Dr. Holloway, are we expecting military transports again?" "That's classified information, Patricia. You know better than to ask." His tone was dismissive but not unkind. "Just be ready for anything." He glanced around the room, his eyes landing briefly on Nia. "We also have new staff joining us. Feel free to introduce yourselves during rounds." After the meeting, staff filed out in small groups. Nia stood and started toward the door when she heard a voice behind her. "You're the new one, right?" She turned. A young man in his late 20s stood there, white coat over his scrubs, a stethoscope draped around his neck. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an awkward smile. "Yes, Nia Wallace. Daniel Carter. first-year resident. He extended his hand, and she shook it. Welcome to Crestview. It's a great place to work once you get used to the intensity. I appreciate that, Nia said. Where do you train? The question was casual, but Nia had answered it enough times to have her response ready. Different places. I moved around a lot. Military background? Daniel asked. Something like that. Before he could ask more, Patricia Hendricks appeared beside them. Her smile was polite, but cool. Dr. Carter, Dr. Holloway needs you in exam 3. And you, she said, turning to Nia, should come with me. I'll show you the floor and get you oriented to our systems. Daniel nodded and headed off. Patricia gestured for Nia to follow. As they walked through the trauma unit, Patricia pointed out supply rooms, equipment stations, and the layout of patient bays. Her explanations were efficient but distant, like she was reading from a manual she'd memorized years ago. We're in a tight ship here, Patricia said. Dr. Holloway doesn't tolerate mistakes, and neither do I. You follow protocols exactly as written. No improvising. No shortcuts. Understood. Understood, Nia replied. They stopped in nurse's station where 2 other women were reviewing charts. Both looked up when Patricia and Nia approached. This is our new nurse, Patricia announced. Nia Wallace. She'll be on day shift rotation. One of the women, a redhead with sharp green eyes, gave Nia a quick once-over. Another diversity hire? The other woman, younger with blonde highlights, laughed softly. Guess they had to fill a quota. Nia kept her expression neutral. She'd heard variations of this before. Patricia didn't correct them. She simply handed Nia a tablet. Familiarize yourself with the patient management system. You'll shadow me today. The morning moved quickly. Nia followed Patricia through rounds, observing how she interacted with patients, checked vitals, and coordinated with doctors. Everything was done with precision, but Nia noticed small things. A blood pressure cuff that wasn't calibrated correctly. A medication cart with doses that didn't match the updated protocol. And 4 pump that was beeping an error code no one seemed to hear. During a quiet moment, Nia approached the 4 pump. She pulled up the settings menu and adjusted the calibration. The beeping stopped. Patricia appeared at her elbow. What are you doing? The pump was showing a sensor error. I recalibrated it. Did I ask you to do that? No, but... Then don't. Patricia's voice was firm. You stick to your assigned tasks. We have technicians for equipment issues. Of course, Nia said quietly. Patricia walked away, shaking her head. By lunchtime, word had spread that the new nurse had already been reprimanded. In the break room, Nia sat alone at a corner table with a sandwich she'd brought from home. Conversations flowed around her, but whenever she glanced up, people looked away. Dr. Holloway entered, grabbed a coffee, and stood near the window scrolling through his phone. A group of residents gathered around him, eager to ask questions and gain his attention. Dr. Holloway, one of them said, "Is it true we're expecting a classified transport today?" "Where did you hear that?" he asked without looking up. "Security's been increased. Armed guards in the West Wing." Holloway finally looked at the resident. "If it's classified, then you don't need to know. Focus on the patients you can access." He left the room, and the residents exchanged excited whispers. Nia listened without appearing to. A classified transport meant military. High level. And that meant this hospital had contracts that went beyond civilian care. That afternoon, a trauma call came in. A construction accident, multiple injuries. The trauma bay erupted into controlled chaos. Doctors barked orders. Nurses moved in practice choreography. Nia was assigned to assist with the least critical patient, a man with a fractured arm and possible concussion. But then one of the other patients crashed. His blood pressure dropped. Alarms blared. Dr. Holloway rushed over, shouting for medications and equipment. Nia glanced at her patient. Stable. She moved toward the crashing patient without thinking. She saw the problem immediately. The central line had been placed incorrectly. It was leaking into surrounding tissue. "He needs a new line," Nia said, her voice calm but firm. "We're working on it," a resident snapped. Nia watched the monitors. The patient was seconds from cardiac arrest. She stepped forward, took the resident's place and repositioned the catheter with steady hands. Within moments, the saline flowed properly. The patient's pressure stabilized. Dr. Holloway stared at her. "Who told you to do that?" "No one, but he was going into arrest." "You don't make those calls. You're a nurse, not a surgeon." "Understand," Nia said. "But he's stable now." Holloway's jaw tightened. He turned to Patricia. "Get her out of this bay. She's done for the day." Patricia grabbed Nia's arm and led her out. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking he was dying." "That's not your decision to make." Nia didn't argue. She changed out of her trauma gown and returned to the nurse's station to complete paperwork. The other nurses whispered as she passed. One of them muttered just loud enough to be heard. Figures, always thinking they know better. That evening, as her shift neared its end, Nia noticed increased activity near the hospital's west entrance. Security personnel in tactical gear. Administrators in suits speaking quietly into radios. Something was happening. She was filing her last chart when Daniel Carter approached her. "Hey," he said quietly. "That thing you did today in the trauma bay. That was incredible." "I was just doing my job," Nia replied. "No, that wasn't standard procedure. You moved like you'd done that 1,000 times. Where did you really train?" Nia met his eyes. "Some mistakes cost more than licenses, Dr. Carter." Before he could respond, the intercom crackled. "All trauma staff, report to Station 1. Incoming priority transport. ETA, 3 minutes." The hospital transformed. Hallways cleared. Doors locked. Armed guards took positions at intersections. Nia followed the other nurses to the trauma bay, where Dr. Holloway was already gowned and waiting. "Listen up," he said. "This is a military transport. High priority. No photos, no questions, no mistakes. You do your job and nothing else." "Clear." Everyone nodded. 2 minutes later, the west entrance doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in, pushing a gurney. On it was a man in his 40s, unconscious, covered in blood and field dressings. His face was bruised and swollen. His breathing was shallow. Military personnel flanked the gurney, weapons visible but not drawn. A woman in a dark suit followed close behind, her expression cold and controlled. "Trauma from classified operation," one of the paramedics said as they transferred the patient to the hospital bed. "Multiple GSWs, shrapnel wounds, possible internal bleeding. He's been stabilized, but critical." Dr. Holloway took charge immediately. "I need a full workup. Chest X-ray, CT scan, blood work, and get me 2 units of O-negative standing by." Nia helped transfer the patient, her hands moving automatically. But as she leaned over him, she saw his face clearly for the first time. Her breath caught. She knew this man. His name was Commander James Hale, and she had seen him once before, years ago, in a place that wasn't supposed to exist. Her hands trembled for just a second. She steadied them and stepped back as the doctors swarmed around him. Patricia noticed her reaction. "You all right?" "Fine," Nia said. But as they wheeled Commander Hale toward the surgical wing, Nia stood frozen in place. Her mind raced through memories she'd buried. A mission that went wrong. A unit that disappeared. A woman who died that day. Or was supposed to. She whispered under her breath, so quiet no one could hear. "You weren't supposed to survive." Hours later, the surgery was complete. Dr. Holloway emerged from the operating room, pulling off his gloves, exhausted but satisfied. He addressed the waiting staff with the confidence of someone who'd just saved a life worth saving. "He made it," Holloway announced. "Barely. Removed 3 bullets, repaired a collapsed lung, and stopped internal bleeding in 2 locations. It was touch and go, but he's stable now." The staff murmured their approval. Patricia nodded with professional satisfaction. Daniel Carter looked relieved. Nia stood near the back, silent. Holloway continued. "He's been moved to ICU, room 347. Full monitoring, restricted access. Only assigned personnel allowed in that wing. Security will handle everything else." The woman in the dark suit stepped forward. She was in her early 50s, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I'm Agent Lisa Brennan," DoD liaison. Commander Hale is under federal protection. His identity is classified. His condition is classified. If anyone asks, you tell them nothing. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, Holloway said. Brennan's gaze swept across the room, lingering briefly on Nia before moving on. Good. I'll be staying on site until further notice. After the briefing, staff dispersed. Nia was assigned to night shift restocking duty, a clear demotion from trauma bay work. Patricia delivered the news without apology. You're being reassigned, Patricia said. Administration thinks you'd be a better fit for less critical tasks right now. I see. It's nothing personal, just staff management. Nia didn't believe that for a second, but she accepted the assignment without protest. As she gathered supplies and began her rounds, she noticed Daniel watching her from across the nurse's station. He approached cautiously. That was unfair what they did to you. I'll manage, Nia said. You saved that guy in the trauma bay today. Everyone knows it, but no one's going to say it. Nia looked at him directly. Dr. Carter, can I give you some advice? Sure. Don't get curious about things that don't concern you. Some knowledge puts targets on people. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? It means stay focused on your work. She moved past him, pushing a supply cart down the hallway. But Daniel didn't stop watching her. Something about the way she moved, the way she assessed her surroundings, didn't match the profile of a simple traveling nurse. Later that night, Nia found herself alone on the ICU floor. Most of the unit was quiet. Commander Hale's room was at the far end, guarded by 2 armed personnel who checked IDs before allowing anyone through. Nia accessed the hospital's electronic medical records system from a workstation. She pulled up Hale's file, but most of it was redacted. His full name appeared, his rank, his date of birth, but his medical history, his service record, even his blood type were all marked classified. She scrolled through his current treatment plan, medications, dosages, post-operative care protocols. Something fell off. The dosages didn't align with standard trauma recovery. Some medications were listed without proper justification. And there were gaps in the digital logs, small missing windows where entries should have existed but didn't. Someone was altering records. Nia logged out and continued her rounds. Around midnight, she passed Hale's room again. The guard had changed shifts. These 2 were younger, less experienced. One was scrolling through his phone. The other yawned. Inside the room, monitors beeped steadily. Nia could see Hale's vitals on the screen outside. Heart rate stable. Blood pressure acceptable. Oxygen levels good. But she knew better than to trust screens. She approached the guards. I need to check his vitals manually. Standard protocol. One of them checked his clipboard. You're not on the authorized list. I'm night shift nursing staff. I don't need to be on a list to do my job. The guards exchanged glances. The older one shrugged. Make it quick. Nia entered the room. The lights were dimmed. Hale lay motionless, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that kept him alive. His face was still swollen, but she could see the man beneath the injuries. She moved to his bedside and checked the 4 lines. Then she examined his wounds, the ones visible above the bandages. These weren't ordinary battlefield injuries. The pattern was wrong. The entry angles didn't match standard combat scenarios. These wounds told a story of an ambush from multiple directions, coordinated fire, and someone who knew exactly where to aim. Her hands moved over the monitors, checking readings, adjusting flow rates. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from recognition. She'd seen injuries like this before, on people who weren't supposed to exist. A soft sound made her freeze. Hale's breathing had changed. His eyelids fluttered. Nia stepped back quickly, but not quickly enough. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening. He looked at her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then his lips parted. His voice was a hoarse whisper. Maya. Nia's blood went cold. That wasn't her name. Not anymore. You're confused, she said softly. You've been through major surgery. You need rest. His hand twitched, trying to reach for her. Maya, you're alive. My name is Nia. I'm your nurse. His eyes closed again, slipping back into unconsciousness. Nia backed toward the door, her heart pounding. She left the room quickly, nodding to the guards as she passed. She returned to the supply room and stood there in the dark, her mind racing. Commander Halle Rejognizither. He knew the name she'd buried years ago. That meant he knew what she'd been, what she'd done. And if he remembered, others might too. Over the next 2 days, Hale remained unconscious. Doctors began preparing a recovery plan, crafting press statements about his heroic survival. The hospital's PR department saw an opportunity. A decorated SEAL commander saved by Crestview's elite surgical team. It was the kind of story that brought in donors and government contracts. But Nia saw something else. Increased surveillance. More agents appearing in hallways. Digital systems being accessed by people who weren't medical staff. Daniel Carter noticed too. He started documenting anomalies. Missing files. Altered timestamps. Security footage with gaps. He brought his findings to Nia one evening in an empty break room. Something's not right, he said, spreading printouts across the table. Look at this. Hale's medical records have been accessed 47 times in 3 days. Most of those accesses came from outside the hospital network. You shouldn't be digging into this, Nia warned. Why not? I'm a doctor. If someone's tampering with patient records, that's a violation. Dr. Carter, you're a first-year resident with student loans and a career to protect. Walk away from this. What if I don't want to? Nia studied him. There was integrity in his eyes, but also naivety. He didn't understand what he was looking at. Then you need to be smarter about how you ask questions. Before Daniel could respond, Nia's pager buzzed. Priority alert. Commander Hale was waking up. She arrived at his room to find it crowded. Dr. Holloway, Agent Brennan, Patricia, 2 other nurses, and military personnel all packed into the space. Hale's eyes were open, scanning the room with sharp awareness despite his injuries. Commander Hale, Holloway said warmly. Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare, but you're going to be fine. Hale's voice was rough. Where am I? Crestview Memorial Hospital. You've been in our care for 3 days. You're safe. Hale's eyes moved across the faces around him. Then they locked onto Nia, standing near the door. Everything changed. His breathing quickened. His heart monitor spiked. He tried to sit up, and several hands moved to restrain him gently. Commander, you need to stay still, Holloway said. You're still recovering. But Hale wasn't listening. His eyes never left Nia. Slowly, with great effort, he raised his right hand. His fingers straightened. His arm extended. He saluted her. The room went silent. Doctors exchanged confused glances. Patricia frowned. Agent Brennan's expression darkened. Daniel, standing in the doorway, stared in shock. Dr. Holloway laughed nervously. Commander, you're confused. That's normal after surgery. This is Nia Wallace, one of our nurses. Hale's hand didn't lower. His voice was weak but clear. Permission to report, ma'am. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Nia felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Her face remained calm, but inside, alarms were screaming. This couldn't happen. Not here. Not now. Commander Hale, she said gently, you need rest. You've been through significant trauma. I know who you are, he said. Agent Brennan stepped forward. Everyone out. Now. The staff filed out quickly. Nia moved to follow, but Hale's voice stopped her. Lieutenant Commander. He spoke with the formality of someone delivering an official report. I need to debrief. Brennan grabbed Nia's arm. Who are you really? I'm a nurse, Nia said calmly. A nurse doesn't get saluted by a Navy SEAL commander. He's disoriented. Medications can cause confusion. Brennan's grip tightened. I'm going to find out everything about you. And if you're lying, you'll wish you'd never walked into this hospital. Nia pulled her arm free and left the room. Behind her, she could hear Hale's raised voice, agitated and insistent. The monitors beeped faster. Medical staff rushed back in. She walked to the nearest stairwell and descended 2 floors before stopping. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them against the cold concrete wall and took slow, controlled breaths. Everything she'd built was unraveling. The life she'd created The anonymity she'd maintained, all of it was crumbling because a man refused to die. Daniel found her 20 minutes later. What the hell was that? I told you, Nia said quietly. Some knowledge puts targets on people. He called you Lieutenant Commander. He's confused. No, he was lucid. I saw his eyes. He knew exactly what he was saying. Daniel stepped closer. Who are you, Nia? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something she'd never said to anyone in this hospital. You don't have clearance to hear the truth. She walked past him and disappeared down the stairs, leaving Daniel standing alone in the dim stairwell, his mind spinning with questions that had no safe answers. Following the shocking moment when Commander Hale saluted Nia in front of hospital staff, the trauma unit became a pressure cooker of whispers and speculation. Dr. Holloway dismissed the incident as medication-induced confusion, but the tension in the air told a different story. The next morning, Nia reported for her shift and found herself immediately summoned to Dr. Holloway's office. Agent Brennan was already there, standing by the window with her arms crossed. Patricia Hendricks sat in a chair near the desk, her expression disapproving. Holloway gestured to an empty chair. "Sit down, Ms. Wallace." Nia remained standing. "I prefer not to." "That wasn't a request," Brennan said sharply. Nia sat, her posture straight, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She looked completely unbothered, which only seemed to irritate Brennan more. Holloway leaned forward on his desk. "What happened yesterday was highly irregular. A patient under our care, a decorated military officer, saluted you. He addressed you with a rank. He became agitated when you left the room. I need an explanation. He's recovering from major trauma and surgery," Nia said evenly. "Confusion is common in these cases." "That wasn't confusion," Brennan interrupted. "That was recognition. He knew you. I've never met Commander Hale before 3 days ago. Then why did he call you Lieutenant Commander?" "You'd have to ask him." Brennan stepped closer. "I've already run your background. Nia Wallace. No military service record. Your nursing license is barely 2 years old. Before that, nothing. You don't exist before 2023. That's not normal. That's someone hiding something." Nia met her gaze without flinching. "Some people rebuild their lives from difficult circumstances. That's not a crime. It is if you're lying to federal authorities." "I haven't lied to anyone." Holloway interrupted. "Ms. Wallace, you need to understand the position this puts us in. Commander Hale is a high-value patient. His presence here is classified. We cannot have unexplained connections between staff and patients in these situations." "There is no connection," Nia said. "Then you won't mind staying away from his room," Brennan stated. "Effective immediately, you're barred from that wing. You don't go near him. You don't speak to him. You don't access his records." "Clear." Nia stood. "Perfectly clear." "One more thing," Holloway added. "You're being reassigned to the supply depot. Full-time, until we sort this out." Patricia looked almost satisfied. Nia simply nodded and left the office without another word. But Commander Hale had other plans. That afternoon, while Nia was inventory checking in the basement supply area, alarms went off in the ICU. Hale's heart monitor was spiking dangerously. Medical staff rushed to his room. Dr. Holloway arrived to find Hale conscious but distressed. His vitals were erratic. He kept pulling at his 4 lines. "Commander, you need to calm down," Holloway said firmly. "Where is she?" Hale's voice was hoarse but determined. "Who?" "The nurse. The one who was here yesterday. She's been reassigned. You don't need to worry about that." Hale tried to sit up, and 3 nurses moved to restrain him. "I need to speak with her. It's urgent. What you need is rest and recovery." "You don't understand," Hale said, his breathing labored. "She's not just a nurse." Holloway exchanged glances with the medical team. "Commander, I'm going to increase your sedatives." "No." Hale grabbed Holloway's wrist with surprising strength. "She saved my unit. All of them. Years ago. She deserves to know I made it out." The room went silent. Patricia, standing near the doorway, felt a chill run down her spine. Daniel Carter, who'd been called in to assist, stared at Hale with wide eyes. Agent Brennan pushed through the crowd. What unit? What operation? Hale's eyes found hers. The one that never happened. It's not manipulation, Daniel said quietly. They were standing at the nurse's station, and several staff members were listening. He's completely lucid. Whatever happened between them, it was real. You don't know that, Patricia snapped. I saw his eyes. He's not confused. He's grateful. The hospital had divided into camps. Some staff believed Nia was taking advantage of a wounded soldier. Others wondered if there was more to the story. Rumors spread through break rooms and staff meetings. The new nurse wasn't what she seemed. She had military connections. She was hiding something significant. Nia heard the whispers, but ignored them. That evening, she was officially reinstated to Hale's care team. When she entered his room, he was awake and watching the door as if he'd been waiting for her. The security guards checked her badge, but didn't stop her. She closed the door behind her, ensuring they had privacy. You shouldn't have done that, she said quietly. Hale's voice was stronger now, though still rough. I don't leave debts unpaid. There is no debt. You pull me out of that ambush. You got my team to the extraction point. Without you, we'd all be dead. Nia moved to check his vitals, avoiding his eyes. That was a different person, in a different life. Was it? Hale studied her carefully. Because I see the same woman. The one who ran into gunfire to drag me behind cover. The one who called in air support under impossible circumstances. The one who stayed behind so the rest of us could live. You need to stop talking about this, Nia said firmly. Whatever you think you remember doesn't exist anymore. That operation was classified. Those people were declared dead. I was declared dead. I know, Hale said. I was at the memorial service. They gave you a flag your family never received. Nia's hands stilled on the monitor. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Then you understand why this can't continue. I understand that you've been hiding, but I don't understand why. She finally looked at him. Because some of us didn't die in that ambush by accident. Someone made sure we wouldn't make it out. And if they know I survived, they'll finish what they started. Hale's expression shifted from gratitude to anger. Who? I don't know. That's why I'm still looking. Then let me help. You can't. You're a patient recovering from near-fatal injuries. The best thing you can do is get better and go back to your life. My life has been spent trying to understand what happened that day, Hale said intensely. Every mission since then, I've been watching for signs. Patterns. Anything that might explain the betrayal. You're the first real lead I've had. Nia shook her head. I'm not a lead. I'm a ghost trying to stay buried. Ghosts don't become nurses. No, she agreed. They become people trying to save lives instead of taking them. Before Hale could respond, the door opened. Daniel Carter stepped in, holding a tablet. He looked nervous. Sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Holloway wants updated vitals. Nia nodded and finished recording the readings. She handed the tablet to Daniel without speaking. As she turned to leave, Hale called out, Lieutenant Commander. She stopped but didn't turn around. Permission to speak freely? Denied, she said softly and walked out. In the hallway, Daniel caught up with her. I heard what he said. About the ambush. About you saving his unit. You shouldn't listen to private conversations. The door was thin. Daniel glanced around to make sure they were alone. Is it true? Were you military? Nia kept walking. Dr. Carter, you're a good person, but you're asking questions that could ruin your career. Maybe I don't care about my career as much as I care about the truth. She stopped and faced him. The truth is complicated and dangerous, and it doesn't always set people free. Sometimes it buries them deeper. Then why did you come here? To this hospital specifically? It was a perceptive question. Nia hesitated. Because people who shouldn't be alive sometimes end up here. And I needed to understand why. You're investigating something. I'm surviving, she corrected. There's a difference. Daniel opened his mouth to ask more, but Brennan appeared at the end of the hallway. She walked toward them with purpose. Ms. Wallace, we need to talk. Nia nodded to Daniel, who reluctantly left. Brennan led her to an empty conference room and closed the door. I spoke with my superiors, Brennan said. They confirmed that Commander Hale's unit was involved in a classified operation 7 years ago. The operation resulted in total casualties. Everyone died, including someone named Maya Trent. Nia said nothing. Maya Trent was a lieutenant commander in a Joint Special Operations Task Force. Her service record is heavily redacted, but what I could access shows expertise in tactical medicine, field operations, and crisis management. She died in an ambush in a country I'm not authorized to name. Then she's dead, Nia said simply. Except Commander Hale seems convinced she's standing in front of me. Commander Hale experienced significant trauma. His perception may be affected. Brennan slammed her hand on the table. Stop playing games. If you're Maya Trent, you're AWOL from a classified program. If you're not, you're impersonating someone with a military record. Either way, you're in serious trouble. Nia remained calm. You said Maya Trent is dead. Dead people can't be AWOL. They can if they fake their deaths. Or if someone else faked them, Nia replied quietly. Brennan paused. What does that mean? It means not everyone who died that day was killed by the enemy. The implication hung in the air. Brennan studied Nia's face, looking for cracks in her composure. She found none. You're saying the operation was compromised from inside. I'm saying nothing, Nia corrected. Because officially, I'm a nurse named Nia Wallace with no military history. And officially, Maya Trent died 7 years ago. Those facts can both be true. Not if you're both people. Nia stood. Agent Brennan, if you want to arrest me, do it. If not, I have patients to care for. Brennan didn't move to stop her. Nia left the conference room and returned to work, but she knew the walls were closing in. The past she'd tried to bury was being excavated piece by piece. The next morning brought unexpected developments that would shatter the fragile balance Nia had maintained. Over the following days, the truth about who Nia really was began to emerge through Commander Hale's persistent testimony and Daniel Carter's relentless investigation. Hale refused medication that would sedate him. He demanded formal meetings with military legal representatives. When they arrived, he gave detailed accounts of the operation that ended with his unit's destruction. He described the tactical decisions made by his commanding officer, a woman identified only by her call sign. He described her expertise under fire, her ability to coordinate rescue operations while wounded herself, and her final act of staying behind to ensure his survival. The military representatives recorded everything. They cross-referenced his testimony with classified records. Slowly, carefully, pieces of Maya Trent's real role began surfacing. She hadn't been just a field medic. She'd been a mission commander for a multinational covert task force, specializing in hostage rescue and intelligence extraction in denied areas. Her unit operated in places where governments couldn't officially send troops. They retrieved people who weren't supposed to exist from situations that were never acknowledged. The ambush that killed her unit wasn't random. According to Hale's account, they'd been inserted to extract a high-value target from a compound. The intelligence was perfect, too perfect. They walked into a coordinated trap with enemy forces positioned exactly where they'd do maximum damage. Hale survived because Maya ordered him to take 3 other team members and run while she provided covering fire. She'd been hit multiple times, but kept fighting. The last thing he saw before reaching the extraction point was her position being overrun. But clearly, she hadn't died there. Daniel spent hours piecing together medical records from the hospital's classified patient database. He discovered something disturbing. Over the past 3 years, several high-level military patients have been transported to Crestview with injuries that didn't match their official reports. Some had experimental treatments administered without standard consent protocols. A few had died under mysterious circumstances, their deaths attributed to combat injuries that didn't align with autopsy findings. He brought his findings to Nia one evening when she was restocking supplies in an empty corridor. "You need to see this," he said, showing her his tablet. Nia glanced at the screen, and her expression darkened. "Where did you get this?" "Hospital archives. Some of it was deleted, but I recovered it from backup servers." He scrolled through files. "Look at the names. Captain Richard Stevens died 3 weeks after arrival. Sergeant First Class Jerome Williams, cardiac arrest during routine recovery. Lieutenant Angela Morrison, sudden organ failure. What's your point? My point is that they were all part of classified operations, and they all ended up here before they died. This hospital isn't just treating military patients. It's involved in something else. Nia took the tablet and examined the records more carefully. Her training kicked in as she analyzed the medical data. The medications used, the procedures performed, the timing of deaths. A pattern emerged that made her blood run cold. These aren't accidental deaths, she said slowly. Someone was testing them. Testing for what? Exposure to chemical or biological agents. Enhanced interrogation effects. Experimental combat medicine. She looked at Daniel. This hospital has been used as a research facility for classified programs. Some of these patients weren't being saved. They were being studied. Daniel felt sick. That's illegal. That's against every medical ethics standard that exists. Not if the patients are already classified as dead, Nia said grimly. Not if their families think they died in combat. Not if no one asks questions because everything is hidden behind national security. We have to report this. To who? The people running this program have authority you can't imagine. They'll bury this evidence and probably bury us with it. Before Daniel could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. Security alerts flashed on wall monitors. Nia's instincts immediately went on high alert. What's happening? Daniel asked. Nia was already moving toward the stairwell. Lockdown protocol. Someone's trying to move Commander Hale. She ran up 3 flights of stairs with Daniel struggling to keep pace. When they reached the ICU floor, they found chaos. Security guards were arguing with men in tactical gear who'd arrived claiming to have official transfer orders. Agent Brennan was shouting into her phone, trying to verify the orders with her superiors. Dr. Holloway stood in the middle of it all, completely out of his depth. Someone tell me what's happening. Nia pushed through the crowd to Hale's room. The door was open. Inside, 2 men in unmarked uniforms were disconnecting his monitoring equipment. Stop, Nia commanded. One of the men turned. He was in his 40s, muscular, with cold eyes that showed no emotion. This doesn't concern you, nurse. Those transfer orders are fake, Nia said calmly. How would you know? Because I know what real extraction protocols look like. And this isn't one of them. The man's expression changed slightly. Recognition flickered in his eyes. You should walk away. Not happening. He reached under his jacket. Nia saw the movement and reacted instantly. She closed the distance between them in 2 steps, grabbed his wrist before he could draw his weapon, and twisted sharply. He grunted in pain and dropped to one knee. The second man moved to help, but Daniel, showing more courage than sense, grabbed a crash cart and shoved it into his path. Security guards finally responded, pulling the 2 men away from Hale's bed. Brennan arrived seconds later, her weapon drawn. Nobody moves, she ordered. The man Nia had disarmed glared at her. You just made a serious mistake. No, Nyadi Blaith. You did. By coming here. Brennan checked the men's credentials. They looked official, but something was off. Serial numbers didn't match database records. Authorization codes were formatted incorrectly. These men weren't military. They were contractors. Lock them down, Brennan ordered. Nobody leaves this floor until I get real verification. The tactical team was detained. The ICU floor was sealed. Hospital administration went into panic mode as they realized a breach had occurred. In the aftermath, Nia stood outside Hale's room, her hands perfectly steady despite what had just happened. Hale watched her through the window with a mixture of respect and concern. Brennan approached her. That was impressive. And stupid. You could have gotten yourself killed. They weren't here to kill, Nia said. They were here to disappear him. How do you know that? Because it's what I would have done. Brennan studied her for a long moment. You're not just a survivor of that ambush, are you? You were the one in charge. The one who made decisions. Nia didn't deny it. Why didn't you come forward after you survived? Brennan asked. Because I didn't know who to trust. The operation was compromised from inside. Someone with access to our mission parameters, our routes, our extraction points. Someone high enough to sell us out and bury the evidence. And you've been hiding ever since. I've been surviving, Nia corrected, and protecting the people who needed protection. What people? Nia hesitated, then decided the truth had to come out. During the ambush, we found a child, a survivor from a village that was destroyed during a weapons test. A test conducted by the same defense contractors who sent those men here today. I got that child out. I've been keeping them safe ever since. Brennan absorbed this information. Where's the child now? Safe. Hidden. And they'll stay that way as long as I'm alive to protect them. You realize what you're saying? That this goes beyond a failed mission. This is about covering up war crimes. Now you understand why I stay dead. Daniel had been listening from nearby. His face was pale but determined. We have evidence. Medical records, patient deaths, research protocols. If we release it all together, they can't hide it. They'll try, Nia said. Then we make it impossible for them to succeed. Hale's voice called from his room. They turned to see him sitting up in bed, looking weak but resolute. We go public. Full transparency. Names, dates, everything. Brennan shook her head. That'll start a firestorm. Investigations, hearings, trials. Everyone connected to this will be exposed. Good, Hale said firmly. That's exactly what needs to happen. Nia looked at the commander, then at Daniel, then at Brennan. 3 people who now knew the truth. 3 people whose lives would never be the same. If we do this, Nia said slowly, we can't stop halfway. We expose everything. The failed mission, the dead soldiers, the medical experiments, the contractors, the officials who authorized it all. Everything. I'm in, Daniel said without hesitation. Brennan took longer to decide. She was a federal agent. This was her career, her reputation, her entire professional life. But she was also someone who'd sworn to protect and serve. I'll need copies of everything, she finally said. Every document, every file, every piece of evidence. And we need to move fast. Those contractors will report back to whoever sent them. We'll have hours at most before they try something else. Then we start now, Hale said. Nia, tell them everything. No more secrets. No more hiding. Nia took a deep breath. For 7 years, she'd been a ghost, a woman living in the shadows to protect herself and others. But ghosts couldn't fight the living. Only the living could do that. My real name is Maya Trent, she began. I was a lieutenant commander in a joint special operations task force. And everything I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level, which means by listening, you're all committing federal crimes. Good thing we're about to commit bigger ones, Daniel said with a nervous smile. And so, in that hospital corridor, surrounded by the evidence of institutional corruption and betrayal, for people made the decision to expose the truth. They didn't know if they'd survive the consequences. They only knew they couldn't live with themselves if they stayed silent. The truth was coming out, and it would either destroy them or set them free. After the decision to expose everything, the hospital transformed from a place of healing into something far more dangerous. Within hours of the failed extraction attempt, the atmosphere shifted. New security personnel appeared, replacing the regular guards with men who moved with military precision and spoke in clipped, efficient tones. Nia noticed them first. She was walking through the main corridor when she spotted 3 men in dark suits stationed at key intersections. Their positions weren't random. They were establishing fields of observation, controlling movement, creating a perimeter. This wasn't protection. This was containment. She found Daniel in a storage room where he'd been copying files to multiple encrypted drives. We have a problem, she said quietly. What kind of problem? Look at the security monitors. Daniel pulled up the hospital surveillance system on his tablet. The new guards were everywhere. Exits were being watched. Stairwells had checkpoints. Even the parking garage had additional personnel. They're boxing us in, Daniel said, his voice tight with fear. They're making sure nobody leaves with evidence. Nia checked the hallway before continuing. How much data have you secured? About 60%. The rest is still uploading to secure servers. I need another 2 hours. We might not have 2 hours. In the ICU, Commander Hale was dealing with his own complications. His condition had stabilized enough that military command wanted him transferred to a secure military hospital. But he refused. He knew that once he left Crestview, he'd disappear into the system. His testimony would be classified, his story buried, his chance to expose the truth eliminated. Agent Brennan sat beside his bed, speaking quietly. They're putting pressure on me to authorize your transfer. My superiors are asking questions I can't answer. Tell them I'm not stable enough to move, Hale suggested. I've used that excuse twice already. They're sending their own medical evaluators tomorrow. Then we need to move faster than tomorrow. Brennan looked troubled. I've been digging into the contractors who tried to extract you. They're employed by a private military company called Sentinel Global Solutions. On paper, they do security consulting, but their real work is classified operations that governments want plausible deniability for. Who owns them? That's where it gets complicated. They're a subsidiary of a larger defense conglomerate, one that has contracts with the Pentagon, the State Department, and several intelligence agencies. Taking them down means going after some of the most powerful people in Washington. Hale's expression hardened. Good. They should have thought about that before they kill my unit. Down in the hospital's administrative wing, Dr. Holloway was having his own crisis. He'd been summoned to an emergency meeting with the hospital's board of directors. When he arrived, he found not just board members, but also representatives from the Department of Defense and a lawyer from Sentinel Global Solutions. The lawyer, a sharp-featured woman named Victoria Cross, spoke with cold authority. Dr. Holloway, your hospital has a patient who poses a significant security risk. Commander Hale has been making unfounded allegations about classified operations. We need him transferred immediately. Commander Hale is recovering from major trauma surgery, Holloway said defensively. I can't authorize a transfer unless it's medically sound. We have our own medical team standing by, Cross replied. They'll handle his care. This is still my hospital, a hospital that receives substantial funding from government contracts. One of the board members interjected nervously. Contracts that could be reconsidered if we're not cooperative. Holloway realized he was being cornered. The hospital's reputation, its funding, its entire future was being used as leverage. What about the nurse? Nia Wallace. She's been central to his care. Cross's eyes narrowed slightly. Ms. Wallace is a separate matter, one we're handling through appropriate channels. That evening, Nia returned to her small apartment off hospital grounds. She lived in a modest building with aging carpets and thin walls, the kind of place where people didn't ask questions about their neighbors. She unlocked her door and immediately knew something was wrong. The air felt different, displaced. Someone had been inside. She moved carefully through the apartment, her training taking over. Living room clear, kitchen clear, bathroom clear, bedroom door slightly ajar when she'd left it closed. She pushed it open slowly. Her room had been searched professionally. Nothing obviously disturbed, but small details were wrong. Drawers not quite closed. Books shifted on shelves. Her laptop moved half an inch from where she'd left it. On her pillow lay a single item that hadn't been there before. A military dog tag. Not hers. It belonged to someone from her unit. Someone who died in the ambush 7 years ago. The message was clear. They knew who she was. They knew what she'd done. And they wanted her to know they could reach her anywhere. Nia picked up the dog tag, her hand trembling slightly. The name etched in the metal brought back memories she'd worked hard to suppress. Sergeant Marcus Webb, 28 years old, father of 2, dead because someone had sold out their mission. She pocketed the dog tag and packed a bag quickly. She couldn't stay here. Within 20 minutes, she was driving back to the hospital, her apartment abandoned. The next morning brought the first public crack in the carefully maintained facade. A reporter from a national news organization showed up at the hospital's front desk asking questions about classified military patients and experimental medical programs. Security escorted him out, but the damage was done. Someone had leaked information. Dr. Holloway confronted Brennan in the hallway. Did you talk to the press? No, Brennan said honestly. But someone did. Who? My guess. Someone inside the military who's tired of covering this up. Hale's not the only person who knows the truth. There are others, and they're starting to talk. In the staff break room, Patricia Hendricks watched the news on her phone. A brief segment mentioned Crestview Memorial and raised questions about its military contracts. Her hand shook slightly as she realized the hospital she'd worked at for 15 years might be involved in something terrible. She found that afternoon, Commander Hale's condition suddenly deteriorated. His heart rate spiked. His blood pressure dropped. Alarms brought medical staff running to his room. Dr. Holloway examined him quickly. His system's crashing. Give me a crash cart. Nia was already there, checking 4 lines. She found the problem immediately. One of his medication bags had been replaced. The dosage was wrong, deliberately wrong. Someone tampered with his medication, she announced. That's impossible, Holloway said. We have strict protocols. Check the bag, Nia insisted. Holloway did. His face went pale when he saw the discrepancy. This isn't what was ordered. Someone switched it. They stabilized Hale, but barely. When he was breathing normally again, Brennan pulled Nia aside. This wasn't an accident. No, Nia agreed. It was an attempt, and it won't be the last. We need to move him. Get him somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe. Not while he's in their system. Then what do we do? Nia looked through the window at Hale, unconscious but alive. We accelerate the timeline. We go public tonight. We're not ready. We're out of time. Daniel had been listening. She's right. If they're willing to kill him inside a hospital with witnesses, they'll try again. Our only protection is exposure. Brennan pulled out her phone. I'll contact the journalist who showed up this morning. If we give him the full story with evidence, he can run it tonight. Do it, Nia said. As evening approached, the team worked frantically to compile everything they had. Daniel finished uploading files to secure servers and created multiple backup copies. Brennan verified her contacts at major news organizations. Nia stayed with Hale, both protecting him and waiting for him to wake so he could provide his testimony on camera. The journalist, a man named Robert Chun with 20 years of investigative experience, arrived through a back-end trance that Brennan had secured. He set up recording equipment in an empty conference room that had been swept for surveillance devices. I need to understand what I'm walking into, Chun said as he tested his cameras. You're talking about exposing classified military operations. That comes with serious legal risks for all of us. We understand the risks, Brennan replied. But this story needs to be told. Then tell me everything. Nia began. She explained who she really was, what her unit had done, and how their final mission had been betrayed. She showed the dog tag that had been left in her apartment. She detailed the years of hiding, the decision to become a nurse, and the realization that the hospital she'd chosen was part of the cover-up. Daniel presented the medical evidence. Charts showing suspicious deaths, records of experimental treatments, financial transactions linking the hospital to defense contractors, a pattern of classified patients receiving care that went beyond standard protocols. Brennan added the institutional connections, names of officials who had authorized the programs, documentation of the private military company's involvement, proof that Commander Hale's extraction attempt had been ordered by people within the government itself. Chun recorded everything, his experienced journalist's instinct telling him this was the story of a lifetime. I need Commander Hale on camera, he said. His testimony is the linchpin. He's still recovering, Nia said. Can he talk? He'll talk. Hale's voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. Hale stood there, leaning heavily on a 4-pole, wearing a hospital gown and looking like he might collapse at any moment. But his eyes were clear and determined. Commander, you should be in bed, Nia said. I've been in bed long enough. He moved slowly into the room and sat in the chair Chun had prepared. Let's do this. Chun positioned the camera and began recording. Commander Hale, can you state your name and rank for the record? Commander James Hale, United States Navy SEALs. Service number classified. Can you tell us about the operation that led to your current injuries? Hale took a breath and began. He described a mission that officially never happened. A covert operation in a country the U.S. wasn't supposed to be operating in. The objective had been to extract intelligence assets from a hostile zone. But when they arrived, they found something else. We discovered evidence of weapons testing, Hale said, his voice steady despite his obvious pain. Chemical agents being used on civilian populations. The tests were being conducted by contractors working for Western defense companies. We weren't supposed to see it, but we did. What happened next? We were ambushed. Coordinated fire from multiple positions. They knew exactly where we'd be and when we'd be there. Most of my unit was killed in the first minutes. He looked directly at the camera. But one person kept us alive. Our commanding officer. She held the line while we extracted. She was wounded multiple times, but kept fighting. We left her for dead because that's what it looked like. But she survived. Who was your commanding officer? Lieutenant Commander Maya Trent. Hale gestured toward Nia. The woman you know as Nia Wallace. Chun turned the camera toward Nia. Ms. Wallace, or Commander Trent, why did you fake your death? I didn't fake it, Nia said quietly. I was declared dead by people who wanted me to stay dead. When I realized the ambush had been orchestrated from inside our own command structure, I understood that coming forward would be suicide. So I disappeared. I created a new identity. And I spent the next 7 years trying to understand who had betrayed us and why. What did you discover? That the ambush wasn't about killing us. It was about covering up the weapons testing. We were witnesses to war crimes being committed by contractors with connections to the highest levels of government. They couldn't let us report what we'd seen. You mentioned a child survivor, Chin prompted. Nia hesitated. This was the most dangerous revelation, but it was also the most important. During the ambush, we found a child. The only survivor from a village that had been used as a testing site. The child was dying from exposure to chemical agents. I got them out. I've been protecting them ever since. Where is this child now? Safe. Hidden. And they'll stay that way. Chin turned back to Daniel. Dr. Carter, you've compiled evidence that this hospital has been involved in the cover-up. Can you explain what you found? Daniel laid out the medical records systematically. Each suspicious death. Each unexplained treatment. Each connection between classified patients and experimental programs. Crestview Memorial wasn't just treating wounded soldiers, Daniel explained. It was studying them, testing medications and procedures that wouldn't be approved through normal channels. Some patients died as a result. Their deaths were classified as combat-related, but the evidence suggests they were victims of medical experimentation. That's illegal, Chin stated. It's illegal if anyone knows about it, Daniel replied. That's why the classification system exists. Not to protect national security, but to protect the people committing crimes in the name of national security. Brennan added her perspective as a federal agent. I've spent my career believing the system worked, that oversight existed, that people in power could be trusted to do the right thing. But this case has shown me how easy it is for that system to be corrupted when enough money and power are involved. What happens now? Chin asked. Now the truth gets out, Brennan said. Once this story breaks, there will be investigations, congressional hearings, criminal prosecutions. The people responsible will be held accountable. If we survive that long, Nia added quietly. Chin stopped recording. I'll have this on air within 2 hours. But you need to understand what's going to happen. The moment this goes public, you'll all become targets. They'll try to discredit you, destroy your reputations. Maybe worse. We know, Hale said. We're ready. But they weren't quite ready for how fast things would move. While Chun was preparing the broadcast, Victoria Cross, the lawyer from Sentinel Global Solutions, was in a secure facility across the city making phone calls to people with considerable power. The story is about to break, she told a man whose voice was distorted through encryption. They have evidence. Testimony. Everything. Can you stop the broadcast? The voice asked. Not legally. Not in time. Then we move to contingency plans. Activate the response team. Contain the witnesses. Recover the evidence. That will be messy. Messy is acceptable. Exposure is not. Back at the hospital, Nia felt the shift before anyone else. Her instincts, honed by years of covert operations, recognized the subtle signs. Security movements changing. Communication patterns shifting. The calm before violence. "They're coming," she said to Brennan. "Soon." "How do you know?" "Because it's what I would do. They know we're about to go public. Their only option is to stop us before the broadcast airs. Chen is uploading the interview now. It'll be live in 90 minutes. Then we need to survive 90 minutes. Hale pulled himself up from his chair. "I can fight." "You can barely walk," Nia said. "Then give me a wheelchair and a weapon." Daniel looked terrified but determined. "What do we do?" Nia assessed their situation quickly. They were in a conference room on the 3rd floor. Limited exits. Good sight lines. Defensible if necessary. "We stay here. We lock the doors. And we wait for the broadcast to air." "And if they breach the room?" Daniel asked. "Then I handle it," Nia said simply. Brennan checked her service weapon. "You won't be alone." Patricia Hendricks appeared in the doorway, startling everyone. "I'm not leaving either," she said firmly. "Whatever happens, I'm part of this hospital. That makes this my responsibility, too." Nia looked at the older nurse with new respect. "You should get somewhere safe." "Safe doesn't exist right now," Patricia replied. "But right is still right. And this is right." They secured the conference room as best they could. Brennan positioned herself near the door. Nia checked the windows for alternative exits. Daniel kept his laptop running, monitoring the upload progress. Hale sat in a chair, conserving his strength, but ready to act if needed. The clock ticked toward broadcast time. Outside the conference room, the hospital continued its normal evening routine, unaware that in one locked room, 5 people were preparing to expose secrets that powerful institutions had killed to protect. 60 minutes until broadcast. Nia checked her phone. No signal. Communications had been jammed. 45 minutes until broadcast. The lights in the hallway outside flickered and went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. 30 minutes until broadcast. Footsteps in the corridor. Multiple people moving with tactical precision. 20 minutes until broadcast. The door handle turned slowly. Tested. Locked. 15 minutes until broadcast. A voice from outside, calm and professional. "Ms. Wallace, this doesn't have to be difficult. Open the door and come with us. Everyone else can walk away." Nia didn't respond. 10 minutes until broadcast. "We're authorized to use force if necessary." Brennan called out her federal authority. "This is Agent Lisa Brennan, Department of Defense. I'm ordering you to stand down. Your authority has been superseded, Agent Brennan. Step aside." 5 minutes until broadcast. The door shuddered as something heavy hit it from outside. They were breaching. Hale struggled to his feet. "Here we go." Patricia moved behind Daniel, protecting him instinctively. Nia positioned herself between the door and the rest of the group. Her entire body was calm, focused, ready for whatever came next. 2 minutes until broadcast. The door splintered. 1 minute until broadcast. Armed men in tactical gear poured into the room. And then, across the city and across the nation, television screens lit up with Robert Chen's face as he began his report. "Good evening. Tonight we bring you an exclusive investigation into classified military operations, illegal medical experimentation, and a cover-up that reaches the highest levels of government." The story was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The tactical team poured through the shattered doorway with military precision. 6 men in black gear, weapons raised, faces hidden behind masks. They moved like professionals, clearing corners and establishing control of the room within seconds. The lead operative pointed his weapon at Nia. On the ground. Now, Nia stood perfectly still, her hands visible but not raised. She assessed the situation with the cold calculation of someone who'd been in worse circumstances. 6 armed men. 1 exit. Civilians to protect. Limited options. But one significant advantage. The broadcast was live. "You're too late," she said calmly. "The story is already out." "That's not your concern anymore," the operative replied. On the ground, Brennan stepped forward, her badge held high. I'm a federal agent. These people are under my protection. You have no authority here. We have all the authority we need. The operative gestured to his team. Secure them. 2 men moved toward the group. Nia shifted her weight slightly, preparing to act. She could take down the first man easily, maybe the second, but 6 was impossible without casualties, and she wouldn't risk Daniel or Patricia getting hurt. Then something unexpected happened. The hospital's PA system crackled to life, not with a medical emergency announcement, but with Robert Chin's voice broadcasting from the television news report. Tonight, we reveal evidence of illegal military operations, medical experimentation on soldiers, and a systematic cover-up involving defense contractors and government officials. The tactical team hesitated. They could hear the broadcast echoing through the hospital corridors. Every floor, every room, every public space was now playing the story they'd been sent to suppress. Someone in the hospital security office had patched the news feed directly into the building's audio system. The entire hospital was hearing the truth. The lead operative touched his earpiece, listening to instructions. His body language changed. The mission parameters had shifted. You couldn't quietly disappear witnesses when their testimony was being broadcast to millions of people in real time. Change of plans, he said to his team. Contain and observe. No engagement unless threatened. His weapon lowered slightly, though it remained ready. The other operatives took defensive positions around the room, creating a perimeter that trapped Nia's group but didn't actively threaten them. It was a stalemate. And for the moment, that was enough. On television screens across the country, Chin's report continued. He showed the medical records Daniel had compiled. Charts appeared demonstrating patterns of suspicious deaths. Photos of classified patients who'd been declared dead in combat, but had actually died at Crestview Memorial. The report cut to Commander Hale's interview. His face filled the screen, bruised but determined, as he described the ambush that killed his unit. We were betrayed from inside our own command structure, Hale said on camera. Someone sold us out to protect illegal weapons testing. My team died because they witnessed war crimes. The camera shifted to Nia. Viewers across the nation saw her face clearly for the first time as she explained who she really was. My name is Maya Trent. I was declared dead 7 years ago, but I survived because I refused to let the truth die with me. In hospitals, homes, bars, and offices across America, people stopped what they were doing to watch. The story was explosive. A covert operative returned from the dead. A decorated SEAL commander confirming a conspiracy. A young doctor risking everything to expose medical crimes. A federal agent turning against her own agency. At the Pentagon, phones began ringing off the hook. At congressional offices, staff scrambled to respond to constituent calls. At news organizations, reporters rushed to verify and expand on Chin's investigation. The story couldn't be contained anymore. It had achieved critical mass. Inside the conference room at Crestview Memorial, everyone watched the broadcast on Daniel's laptop. Even the tactical operatives seemed transfixed by what was unfolding. Chin's report showed footage of Sentinel Global Solutions headquarters. Documents appeared on screen linking the private military company to defense contracts worth billions. Names of executives were displayed alongside their connections to government officials. Then came the most damaging revelation. Video footage obtained from classified sources showed chemical weapons testing in an unnamed country, civilians fleeing, children dying, and in the corner of one frame, barely visible, was the logo of a Western defense contractor. This is what Commander Hale's unit discovered, Chin narrated. This is what they died to protect. And this is what powerful institutions have been hiding for 7 years. Victoria Cross, the Sentinel Global Solutions lawyer, watched the broadcast from her office with growing horror. She grabbed her phone and called the encrypted number she'd used earlier. It's over, she said. The footage is out. The documents are verified. We can't spin this. The voice on the other end was silent for a long moment. Initiate damage control protocol. Distance the company from field operations. Blame rogue elements. We survive by sacrificing the expendable. What about the witnesses? They're national heroes now. Touching them would be suicide. Let them have their moment. We'll weather this storm. Cross hung up and began drafting statements. The dance of institutional survival was beginning, admitting nothing, denying everything, and preparing to throw subordinates to the wolves while the real decision-makers remained protected. But something was different this time. The evidence was too strong. The witnesses too credible. The public attention too intense. Back at the hospital, the broadcast ended. Chen's final words hung in the air. These 5 people risked everything to bring you this story. Commander Hale, Lieutenant Commander Trent, Dr. Carter, Agent Brennan, and Patricia Hendricks. They're heroes. And tonight, because of them, the truth is finally free. The conference room was silent. Then, slowly, the lead operative lowered his weapon completely. Orders are to withdraw, he said quietly. You're too visible now. Too public. He looked at Nia with something that might have been respect. Well played. His team filed out without another word. The sound of their boots echoed down the hallway and then faded. They were gone. Brennan let out a breath she'd been holding. That actually worked. For now, Nia said. She didn't trust this victory yet. Too many powerful people had too much to lose. Daniel collapsed into a chair, adrenaline draining from his system. We did it. It's really over. No, Hale said from his wheelchair, his voice tired but firm. It's just beginning. The exposure was the easy part. What comes next is harder. He was right. Within an hour, the hospital was surrounded. Not by tactical teams, but by news vans. Reporters crowded the entrance, their cameras ready, their questions prepared. Federal investigators arrived to secure evidence. Military police came to escort Commander Hale to a secure location. Hospital administrators scrambled to respond to the crisis. Dr. Holloway found himself confronted by board members demanding answers. Had he known about the illegal programs? Had he participated? Had he profited? He hadn't known the full extent, but he'd suspected enough. He'd looked the other way when red flags appeared. He'd prioritized the hospital's prestige over asking uncomfortable questions that made him complicit, even if not criminally so. He found Nia in the hallway as she was preparing to leave the building. I owe you an apology, he said. Nia looked at him. You owe more than me an apology. I know. I failed the patients who trusted us. I failed the staff who believed this was a place of healing. I failed myself. He paused. For what it's worth, I'm resigning. The hospital needs leadership that will rebuild trust. That's not me. That's a start, Nia said. But resignation isn't accountability. You need to testify. Tell investigators everything you saw, everything you ignored, everyone who knew. I will, Holloway promised. I'll make this right, however I can. Patricia approached them. She'd been crying, her professional composure finally cracking under the weight of everything that had happened. I should have seen it, she said. All those years, all those patients. I should have known. You trusted the system, Nia said gently. That's not a crime. But now you know the system can be corrupted. Use that knowledge. Make sure it doesn't happen again. Ow! Teach. Train the next generation of nurses to ask questions. To speak up when something feels wrong. To never assume that authority means correctness. Patricia nodded, wiping her eyes. I can do that. Daniel emerged from the conference room, carrying hard drives filled with evidence. Federal investigators were waiting to take possession of everything he'd compiled. His future was uncertain. He'd violated hospital protocols, accessed confidential records, and potentially broken several laws in pursuit of the truth. But he'd also exposed crimes that were far greater than anything he'd done. As one federal attorney put it, we don't prosecute whistleblowers who save lives. As night deepened, Nia finally made her way outside. The crowd of reporters surged toward her, but federal marshals created a protective corridor. Questions were shouted from every direction. Commander Trent, how does it feel to be alive? What happened to the child survivor? Will you return to military service? What do you want people to know? Nia stopped and turned to face the cameras. The marshals allowed her a moment to speak. I want people to know that the men and women of my unit were heroes. They died protecting evidence of crimes they had no part in. They deserved better than to be erased from history. I survived to make sure they were remembered. She paused. And I want people to know that institutions are only as good as the people who demand accountability. Don't trust. Verify. Don't assume. Question. That's what keeps democracy alive. She turned and walked to a waiting vehicle. Agent Brennan was already inside. They were being transported to a secure location for formal debriefing and protection while the investigation unfolded. Commander Hale was placed in a separate vehicle, accompanied by military medical personnel. As his transport pulled away, he raised his hand one final time in salute toward Nia's vehicle. She returned it, a moment of mutual respect between two soldiers who'd survived impossible odds. The vehicles drove into the night, leaving Crestview Memorial behind. The hospital would survive, though forever changed. New leadership would eventually restore its reputation, but it would never again be the place where secrets went to hide. 3 months later, the investigation had expanded beyond anyone's initial expectations. Congressional hearings were scheduled. Federal prosecutors had indicted 17 individuals, including 3 senior executives from Sentinel Global Solutions. 2 former government officials had been arrested. Dozens more were under investigation. The military had quietly reopened cases of soldiers who died under suspicious circumstances. Families who'd been told their loved ones died in combat were now learning the truth. Some of those truths were more painful than the original lies. Others brought a measure of closure. Nia sat in a small apartment in Arlington, Virginia, watching the congressional hearings on television. This place was temporary housing provided by the federal government while she waited to testify before Congress. It was modest but secure, and after years of looking over her shoulder, security felt like luxury. Her phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she answered. "Hey, are you watching this?" He meant the hearings. "Yeah, Senator Phillips is doing good work. She's destroying them." Daniel sounded satisfied. On screen, a senator was methodically dismantling the testimony of a defense contractor who'd claimed ignorance of field operations. "How are you doing?" Nia asked. "Good, actually. The medical board reviewed my case. They're not pursuing charges, and I got accepted into a fellowship program focused on medical ethics and oversight. That's perfect for you. What about you? Have you decided what you're doing after all this is over?" Nia looked around the apartment. "I'm not going back to hiding, if that's what you're asking. But I'm also not going back to being Lieutenant Commander Trent. So what's the plan? I'm keeping the nursing license. I've been offered a position training trauma teams for Doctors Without Borders. Crisis zones, places where people need help and don't care about your past. That sounds dangerous. It is, but it's also real. It's using my skills to save lives instead of taking them. That feels right." They talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. Nia returned her attention to the television, where Commander Hale was now on screen, testifying before Congress. He looked healthier than he had at the hospital. The weeks of recovery had restored some color to his face and strength to his voice. He sat in his dress uniform, his bearing military straight, despite the injuries he'd sustained. "Commander Hale," Senator Phillips said, "you've stated that your unit was deliberately betrayed. Can you explain what evidence supports that conclusion?" "Yes, Senator. The timing and precision of the ambush could only have been possible with inside information. The enemy knew our exact insertion point, our planned route, and our extraction coordinates. That information was compartmentalized. Only a handful of people had access to our complete mission parameters. Have those individuals been identified? Some have been. Others are still being investigated. But the pattern is clear. Someone in our command structure provided intelligence to hostile forces in exchange for payment from defense contractors who wanted their illegal weapons testing protected. And you're certain Lieutenant Commander Trent's actions saved your life?" "Completely certain. She held off multiple hostile forces while wounded, allowing my team to reach the extraction point. Without her, none of us would have survived. Where's Lieutenant Commander Trent now? She's awaiting her own testimony before this committee. And with respect, Senator, I'd like to state for the record that she deserves full restoration of her rank, her honors, and her service record. She didn't abandon her post. She survived against impossible odds and spent 7 years protecting evidence and witnesses while the rest of us moved on with our lives. The senator nodded. The committee will take that recommendation under advisement. Nia turned off the television. Hale meant well, but she didn't want her rank restored. That life was over. She'd been Maya Trent once. She'd been Nia Wallace. Now she was becoming someone new. Someone who could live in the light instead of the shadows. A week later, Nia testified before Congress. The hearing room was packed with reporters, government officials, and families of soldiers who died in classified operations. She wore civilian clothes, not a uniform. She answered questions clearly and completely, holding nothing back. She described the weapons testing her unit had discovered, the village that had been used as a proving ground for chemical agents, the child she'd rescued and hidden for 7 years. Where is this child now? Senator Phillips asked. Safe. In college, actually, studying medicine. They want to become a doctor and return to their home country to help people affected by what was done to their village. Are they willing to testify? They are, but I'd ask that their identity remain protected. They've suffered enough. The committee will ensure their safety. Nia also testified about the hospital, the suspicious deaths, and the pattern of medical experimentation. She named names. She provided dates. She corroborated everything Daniel had documented. When her testimony concluded, she stepped down from the witness chair. Families of fallen soldiers approached her in the hallway. Some thanked her. Some cried. Some simply needed to tell her about the people they'd lost. She listened to every story, remembered every name. These were the people her unit had died trying to protect. These were the families who deserved truth instead of comfortable lies. Agent Brennan found her afterward. That was powerful testimony. Think it'll make a difference? Nia asked. It already has. 2 more executives resigned this morning. The Pentagon announced a full review of contractor oversight. It's not enough, but it's movement. What about you? How's the federal investigation treating you? Brennan smiled slightly. Complicated. My superiors aren't happy that I broke chain of command, but the evidence I helped expose has led to some major arrests. They're calling me a hero in public and discussing my future in private. What do you want? Honestly, I want to work cases like this. Root out corruption. Hold powerful people accountable. There's a new task force being formed. They want me to lead it. That's perfect for you. What about you? Testifying is done. You're officially cleared of all charges. You could disappear again if you wanted. Nia shook her head. I'm done disappearing. I'm going to live my life openly. Use my real name. Stop hiding from ghosts. Maya Trent is officially alive again. No, Maya Trent died in that ambush. But I'm alive, and I'm going to honor her memory by living better than she could have imagined. 6 months after the exposure, Nia boarded a plane to Syria. She carried medical supplies and trauma equipment provided by Doctors Without Borders. Her first assignment was a field hospital near a conflict zone where civilians needed care and questions about her background would matter. Before she left, she visited Commander Hale one final time. He was back on active duty on a training capacity rather than field operations. His body had healed as much as it would. The scars remained, but he wore them with quiet pride. They met at a coffee shop near the Pentagon. 2 survivors of impossible circumstances sharing a normal moment in a normal place. You're really leaving? Hale asked. I am. This country doesn't need me anymore, but there are places that do. Will you come back? Eventually, when I'm ready. She paused. Thank you for not forgetting me, for refusing to let them bury the truth. Thank you for saving my life. Twice. Hadisimidet. Once in that ambush, and once in that hospital when you could have walked away. I never walk away from my team. I know. That's what makes you a good commander. They finished their coffee and said goodbye. No salutes this time. Just a handshake between equals who'd fought the same battle from different positions. Nia walked out into the bright afternoon sunshine. For the first time in 7 years, she didn't check over her shoulder, didn't scan for threats, didn't calculate escape routes. She was free. A year after the exposure, significant changes had reshaped multiple institutions. Crestview Memorial had new leadership and a completely restructured ethics oversight program. Patricia Hendricks had become the director of nursing education, teaching courses on medical accountability and patient advocacy. Daniel Carter completed his fellowship and joined the faculty at a medical school, where he taught future doctors about the importance of questioning authority and maintaining ethical standards. Agent Brennan's task force had expanded, investigating corruption across multiple government agencies. She'd become known as someone who couldn't be bought, intimidated, or deterred. Commander Hale continued serving, but also spent time speaking to military classes about the importance of moral courage and the duty to question illegal orders. The child survivor Nia had completed medical school and returned to their home country, where they established a clinic treating victims of chemical exposure. They never forgot the woman who'd saved them, and they honored her by saving others. And Nia herself found purpose in the chaos of war zones and disaster areas. She treated civilians caught in conflicts they didn't create. She trained local medical staff in trauma care. She moved from crisis to crisis, never staying long enough to put down roots, but always staying long enough to make a difference. She went by her own name now. Not Maya Trent. Not Nia Wallace. Just Nia. One name, like she was starting fresh. On quiet nights in field hospitals, she thought about her unit. The soldiers who died in that ambush. She remembered their faces, their voices, their dreams. They'd been real people with families and futures that had been stolen from them. But they hadn't been forgotten. That was what mattered. 2 years after the exposure, Nia received word that the last of the major defendants had been convicted. Executives from Sentinel Global Solutions were sentenced to prison terms. Government officials were stripped of their positions and faced criminal penalties. The system wasn't perfect, but justice had been served. She was in South Sudan when the news reached her, treating victims of renewed violence. A young doctor approached her with a satellite phone. "Call for you," he said. "Someone from the United States Congress." Nia took the phone, curious. "This is Nia." Senator Phillips's voice came through clearly despite the distance. "Ms. Trent, I wanted to personally inform you that Congress has voted to award you the Congressional Gold Medal for your actions, exposing the illegal programs and protecting witnesses at great personal risk." Nia was silent for a moment. "Senator, I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not looking for awards. I understand, but sometimes recognition matters. Not for you, but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. We want to send a message that doing the right thing, even at personal cost, is valued and protected. What about my unit? The people who actually died. They're receiving posthumous honors as well. Their names are being added to memorials. Their families are receiving full benefits and recognition of their sacrifice. That mattered more than any medal. Thank you, Senator. That means everything. Will you come back to receive your medal? Not right now. There are people here who need medical care. But someday, yes. When the time is right. We'll be ready whenever you are." Nia ended the call and handed the phone back. She returned to her work, treating a young girl with shrapnel wounds from a mortar attack. The girl was frightened but brave, reminding Nia of the child she'd rescued years ago. "You're going to be fine," Nia told her gently. "I've got you. You're safe now." The girl relaxed slightly, trusting in the steady hands and calm voice of someone who knew what she was doing. This was where Nia belonged. Not in congressional hearing rooms or award ceremonies. Not in hospitals with political agendas or military units with classified missions. Here, in the field, helping people who needed help, saving lives instead of taking them. She'd been a soldier once, a commander, a covert operative trained to operate in the shadows and make impossible decisions. But now she was something better. She was a healer, and that made all the difference. 5 years after the exposure, Nia finally returned to the United States. She attended the medal ceremony at the Capitol, standing beside Commander Hale, Daniel Carter, Agent Brennan, and Patricia Hendricks. All 5 of them were recognized for their courage in exposing institutional corruption. The ceremony was dignified and meaningful. But what mattered more to Nia was what happened afterward. Families of the soldiers who died in her unit gathered together. They formed a support network, helping each other process the truth about what had really happened to their loved ones. They invited Nia to join them. She stood before these families, many of whom she'd never met, and told them about the people they'd lost. She shared memories of courage and humor and humanity. She made sure they knew their loved ones had been heroes who died trying to do the right thing. A woman in her 60s, mother of one of the fallen soldiers, hugged Nia tightly. "Thank you for not letting them be forgotten." "They'll never be forgotten," Nia promised. "I'll make sure of that." That evening, the 5 of them gathered at a quiet restaurant. No cameras, no reporters, just 5 people who'd changed the world sitting together like old friends. They talked about the investigation, the trials, the changes that had resulted from their exposure. But mostly they talked about normal things. Life, plans, hope. "To unlikely heroes," Commander Hale said, raising his glass. "To doing the right thing," Daniel added. "To accountability," Brennan said. "To second chances," Patricia offered. Nia raised her glass last. "To the ones who didn't make it, and to honoring them by living better." They drank together, a team forged not in combat, but in the harder battle of confronting truth and demanding justice. Later, as Nia walked through the streets of Washington, she thought about how far she'd come. From a woman declared dead to someone living fully alive. From hiding in shadows to standing in the light. From taking lives to saving them. The journey hadn't been easy. The cost had been high. But standing here now, free and purposeful and unafraid, she knew it had been worth it. She'd been given a second chance at life, and she was determined to use it well. The next morning, Nia boarded another plane. Back to the field, back to the work, back to the people who needed her most. Because that's who she was now. Not a soldier, not a ghost, just a woman doing what she could to make the world a little better, one life at a time. And that was enough. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to stay silent when the world demands their silence.